Now, Buffalo police and Crime Stoppers need your help tracking down this man in connection to a deadly shooting that happened near ECMC this morning. This is 45-year-old Adam Benefield. Police say he may be armed and is dangerous. You should call 911 if you see him. Crime Stoppers is offering up to $2,500 for information that leads police to him tonight. The Erie County Sheriff's Office says Benefield is a person of interest in the death of Kiara Hudson, the mother of three, shot in front of her children this morning on Richlawn Avenue. We spoke with her family today, who told us the disturbing details of domestic violence they say she suffered leading up to her murder.
"He's going to kill me. You don't understand." These chilling words came from Kiara Hudson as she strapped on a bulletproof vest before taking her children to school on an October morning in Buffalo. Her mother watched in disbelief, unable to comprehend why her daughter needed such extreme protection for a routine school drop-off. What Kiara's mother didn't know was that within hours, her daughter's premonition would come true in the most devastating way possible. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community as we uncover the truth behind the headlines. Today, we examine how a system meant to protect the vulnerable instead set the stage for tragedy. How could a woman who took every precaution, even wearing body armor, end up murdered in front of her own children? And why was her killer, a man with a violent past, walking free despite clear warning signs? The answers lie in a web of legal loopholes, missed opportunities, and systemic failures that would cost a mother of three everything. Stay with us as we unravel the heartbreaking story of Kiara Hudson, a woman who predicted her own murder but couldn't prevent it from happening. Kiara Hudson was a 30-year-old woman living in Buffalo, New York at the time of her death. Kiara was known first and foremost as a devoted mother of three young children. Friends and family described her as loving, protective, and deeply committed to her kids' well-being. She worked hard to provide a stable home, often putting her children's needs above her own. Kiara's social media was filled with photos of her children, and she was always present at school events and family gatherings, making sure her kids felt loved and supported. Her nurturing spirit was evident to everyone who knew her, and her children were the center of her world. Her life took a significant turn when she met Adam Benefield. Their relationship began with the promise of partnership and support, and soon after they married. To outsiders, Adam could appear charming and attentive, and for a time she believed she had found someone who would help her build a secure future for her family. However, beneath the surface, troubling signs began to emerge early in their marriage. The first warning signs were subtle but unmistakable to those close to her. She became more withdrawn, and her once frequent visits and calls to family members became sporadic. Friends noticed that she seemed anxious and less confident, often second-guessing herself or seeking Adam's approval before making decisions. There were also reports of controlling behavior from Adam, such as monitoring her whereabouts and limiting her contact with friends and relatives. These red flags, while concerning, were difficult for her to address openly, as she hoped things would improve and wanted to keep her family together. As time went on, the situation escalated. Adam's violent criminal history came to light, most notably his prior conviction for kidnapping. This revelation shocked Kiara's family, who had already sensed that something was wrong. The knowledge that Adam had a history of violence made their concerns for Kiara's safety even more urgent. Despite this, Kiara struggled with the decision to leave, torn between her desire to protect her children and the hope that Adam might change. From the perspective of Kiara's family, the relationship was fraught with fear and frustration. They saw the changes in Kiara and worried constantly about her well-being. Family members tried to offer support and encouraged her to seek help, but they also understood the complexities of her situation. Leaving an abusive relationship is never easy, especially when children are involved, and the abuser has a history of manipulation and intimidation. Kiara's loved ones felt helpless at times, watching her navigate a dangerous and isolating situation. In late September 2022, Kiara Benefield made a decision that would expose the reality of her marriage to the world. She posted a video to Facebook, captured by her home security camera, showing Adam Benefield attacking her inside their home. The footage was graphic and left no room for doubt about the violence she endured. Alongside the video, Kiara wrote a message that revealed her frustration and desperation. "This is what this man does to me, but I'm always treated like I'm the abuser." This public plea was not her first attempt to seek help. Days earlier, she had called 911 to report an assault. Police responded, documented her statement, and obtained an arrest warrant for Adam. However, the charges were limited to misdemeanors, and she was advised to call again if Adam returned. The legal response offered little reassurance, and the threat remained. Realizing the danger was escalating, she took further steps to protect herself and her children. She began staying at her mother's house, refusing to risk another night alone. She kept her family informed, sending her sister Montasha Jeter videos and text messages, and even sharing her phone password in case something happened to her. Every action was calculated, every precaution a response to the growing sense of urgency. Kiara's fear was not just for herself, but for her children.
She said that she needed her vest. She just got a vest in yesterday. She had it on, and she took a picture in it last night and said, "If this isn't a cry for help, I don't know what is." Buffalo Police Department. Been trying to get help. I've been with her, going to police stations. She's been texting me, sending me videos, giving me her phone password just in case anything. She gave me her cell phone password just in case I need to get into her phone.
She became hypervigilant, rarely leaving the house without notifying someone of her whereabouts. The anxiety was constant and sleep became elusive. Even surrounded by family, she felt the weight of isolation. Her safety depended on a system that had already shown its limitations. The psychological toll was immense. Kiara's conversations with her mother and sister revealed a woman who was exhausted, frightened, and increasingly convinced that her warnings were not being taken seriously. The decision to wear a bulletproof vest was a stark reflection of her reality. She believed her life was in immediate danger, and she was running out of options. Despite her efforts, Kiara's sense of isolation deepened. She had made her suffering visible to the world, reached out to authorities, and relied on her family for support, yet the threat persisted. The days leading up to her death were marked by a relentless fear that no amount of vigilance could ease. Kiara's story in these final days is not just about the violence she endured, but about the courage it took to keep fighting for her life and her children's safety, even as hope faded. On October 4, 2022, her efforts to protect herself reached a critical point. Adam Benefield was finally arrested after the violent incident she had documented and reported. Kiara, her family, and many in the community hoped this would be the moment she could finally breathe a little easier. Instead, what followed exposed the deep flaws in the very system meant to protect her. Despite the video evidence and Kiara's detailed statements, Adam faced only misdemeanor charges: third-degree assault, fourth-degree criminal mischief, second-degree messing, and second-degree unlawful imprisonment. Under New York law, these charges were not considered serious enough to qualify for bail. The judge, bound by the state's bail reform statutes, had no legal grounds to keep Adam in custody. Even Adam's prior conviction for armed kidnapping, a crime for which he had served 15 years, could not be considered in the bail decision. The law did not allow the court to weigh the risk he posed to Kiara or her children. Kiara was granted an order of protection, but she and her family knew it was little more than a formality. The paper barrier offered no real security against a man who had already shown a willingness to ignore boundaries and escalate violence. The sense of dread in Kiara's family grew as Adam walked out of court, free to return to the community. The next morning, her actions spoke volumes about her state of mind. She put on a bulletproof vest before leaving her mother's house, a decision that stunned her family. When her mother questioned her, her answer was chillingly direct. She believed Adam would kill her. This was not a vague fear. It was a certainty born from experience and a clear understanding of the dangers she faced. The legal system's limitations became painfully clear. The judge's hands were tied. The district attorney's office insisted the charges matched the available evidence, and the law itself prevented any consideration of Adam's history or the pattern of violence. Kiara's family, watching these events unfold, felt powerless. They had accompanied her to police stations, supported her through every step, and now found themselves confronting a reality where the law offered no meaningful protection. This failure was not just procedural, it was personal. Kiara had done everything she could. She reported the abuse, documented the violence, sought help, and followed every instruction given by authorities. Yet the system's rigid boundaries and lack of flexibility left her exposed. The order of protection, the court appearance, and the arrest all amounted to little when the law could not adapt to the urgency of her situation. For Kiara, the hours after Adam's release were filled with anxiety and resignation. She continued to communicate with her family, sharing her fears and making sure they knew how to access her phone and messages if anything happened. The sense of being let down by those in power was overwhelming. Not just for Kiara, but for everyone who loved her. The events of October 4th and 5th would soon become a rallying point for advocates and lawmakers, but for Kiara and her family the consequences were immediate and irreversible. The system's failure was not an abstract policy debate. It was a matter of life and death, and it left Kiara facing her greatest fear alone. October 5, 2022 began like any other school day, but for Kiara Hudson, every moment was shadowed by dread. She left her mother's house with her 3 children, each child buckled into the back seat, her bulletproof vest hidden beneath her clothes. The streets of Buffalo were quiet, but Kiara's mind was racing. She was determined to get her children safely to school, despite the threat she knew was close. As Kiara drove through the intersection of Richlawn Avenue and Shawnee Avenue, Adam Benefield was already waiting. He had tracked her route, his intentions clear. Without warning, he rammed his pickup truck into her SUV, forcing her to a stop. The children, startled and confused, watched as their father stepped out of his vehicle, shotgun in hand. Adam approached her car with chilling purpose. In a matter of seconds, he fired through the window, striking her in the head. The bulletproof vest she wore could not protect her from the fatal shot. Her children, trapped in the back seat, witnessed the unthinkable. Their mother's life taken in front of them. The chaos that followed was immediate. Neighbors rushed outside, drawn by the sound of gunfire and the cries of children. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do for Kiara. The scene was devastating. A mother's body slumped in the driver's seat, her children in shock, and Adam Benefield already fleeing the area. News of the murder spread rapidly through Buffalo and beyond. The brutality of the act, combined with the knowledge that Kiara had sought help and protection, left the community reeling. Local media reported on the tragedy, highlighting the fact that Kiara had worn a bulletproof vest out of fear for her life, a detail that underscored the depth of her terror and the failure of the system to keep her safe. For her family, the hours and days after her death were a blur of grief and disbelief. The children, now motherless, faced a future forever altered by trauma. The murder of Kiara Hudson was not just a personal tragedy. It was a public reckoning. The details of her final moments, the presence of her children, and the knowledge that she had predicted her own death forced the community and authorities to confront the consequences of inaction. Kiara's story became a symbol of the urgent need for change, her name echoing in calls for reform and justice. In the aftermath of Kiara Hudson's murder, the city of Buffalo was gripped by shock and outrage. Adam Benefield, now the subject of an intense manhunt, managed to evade authorities for a week. The search involved local police and the U.S. Marshals Service, with the community anxiously awaiting news of his capture. When he was finally apprehended, relief swept through Kiara's family and the wider public, but the sense of loss remained overwhelming. Adam was charged with second-degree murder, aggravated criminal contempt, and 3 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. The charges reflected not only the brutality of the crime, but also the trauma inflicted on Kiara's children, who had witnessed the killing. For the first time, Adam was held without bail, a stark contrast to the day before the murder, when the law had allowed his release. The legal proceedings drew significant attention. During his arraignment, Adam pleaded not guilty, and the courtroom was tense. Kiara's family attended every hearing, determined to see justice served. The prosecution presented the evidence, the video Kiara had posted. her statements to police, and the harrowing details of the attack. The defense offered little in the way of explanation, and Adam's prior conviction for kidnapping was widely discussed in the media, even though it could not be formally considered in the bail decision before the murder. As the trial unfolded, the community followed every development. The case became a focal point for discussions about bail reform and the treatment of domestic violence cases in New York. Advocates and lawmakers debated whether the law should allow judges to consider a defendant's history of violence when making bail decisions. Kiara's story was cited repeatedly as an example of the tragic consequences that can result from rigid legal standards. The verdict brought a measure of closure. Adam Benefield was found guilty on all counts, including second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison, ensuring he would not have another opportunity to harm Kiara's family.
See, I'm here because I don't want to be here. I'm forced to be here to fight these charges.
All right, thank you. You're here because the jury convicted you of brutally killing your wife.
Interrupting me while I'm talking. I don't interrupt you, so why do you keep interrupting me? I know you can judge, but
Okay, hear me out. I've heard enough of this narcissistic. You're a narcissist, and I'm not going to put this family
You're a
again.
narcissist because you're talking and you're going all.
Shut his microphone off, and if you keep talking, I'm going to do it without you. You'll be in there. I've heard enough from you. You killed your wife. A jury of 12 convicted you.
A white jury that did not have any black jurors on there, and that's not law. That is a setup. So you want to send me out there, I go out there, but you know what the law is, and you haven't followed it. And neither has you, and neither has you.
All right.
Everybody sat here and
Hear me out. Shut up.
I'm not going to shut up.
Get him out of here.
Get out of here.
I want to apologize to these children. And I'm so sorry for some reason your mother ever ran into this guy. I wanted to tell him, but I couldn't take it anymore. How he could disregard the love of his child and his two stepchildren by taking a shotgun. And what I heard at this trial, he missed the first shot. He blew her finger off and, from my understanding, hit her shoulder. He could have stopped, and I want to tell him that, but it wouldn't have done any good. So, unfortunately, under the law, I cannot send him to jail for the rest of his life without any chance of parole. But I will give him the maximum, because if anybody deserves it, he does. It is a judgment of this court that upon his conviction for the crime of murder in the second degree, that he be sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment, which will have a maximum of life. The court hereby imposes a minimum of 25 years, plus the maximum fine of $5,000. With regard to the conviction of aggravated criminal contempt, he has 30 days on which to file a notice of appeal, and I will write a letter. I want the family to know, I will write a letter to the parole board using the strongest language possible that he never ever sees the light of day. That concludes the sentencing.
During sentencing, Kiara's mother addressed the court, describing the pain of losing her daughter and the impact on her grandchildren. Her words were a powerful reminder of the human cost behind the legal proceedings. In addition to the criminal trial, Hudson's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Cheektowaga and its police department. The suit alleged that authorities had failed to act on clear evidence of danger, allowing Adam to remain free and ultimately carry out the murder. The lawsuit reignited public debate about accountability and the responsibilities of law enforcement in protecting victims of domestic violence. The legal battle was not just about punishment, it was about recognition. Kiara's family wanted the system to acknowledge its failures and to take steps to prevent similar tragedies. Their pursuit of justice extended beyond the courtroom as they became advocates for change, speaking out about the need for stronger protections and more responsive intervention in domestic violence cases. For the community, the resolution of the case was bittersweet. Adam Benefield's conviction ensured he would spend decades behind bars, but it could not undo the harm done to her children or restore the sense of safety that had been shattered. The legal proceedings highlighted the gaps in the system and the urgent need for reform, keeping her memory alive as a catalyst for change. Kiara Hudson's murder sent shockwaves far beyond her immediate family, igniting a citywide and eventually national conversation about the realities of domestic violence and the failures of the systems meant to protect vulnerable individuals. In the days following her death, vigils were held across Buffalo. Friends, neighbors, and strangers gathered to mourn, lighting candles and sharing stories about Kiara's warmth, her devotion to her children, and her determination to survive. Her mother and sister became the faces of a growing movement, speaking to the media and lawmakers about the urgent need for change. The trauma experienced by her 3 children was profound. Suddenly orphaned, they were placed in the care of their grandmother, who faced the daunting task of helping them heal while grappling with her own grief. The children's lives were forever altered, not only by the loss of their mother, but by the memory of witnessing her final moments. Counselors and social workers became a regular presence, working to help them process the trauma and rebuild a sense of safety. The community rallied around the family, organizing fundraisers and support networks to provide for the children's needs and future. Kiara's story quickly became a rallying cry for advocates of domestic violence reform. Her name was invoked at rallies, in legislative hearings, and on social media, where the hashtag #JusticeForKiara trended for weeks. Survivors of abuse and their families shared their own stories, drawing parallels to Kiara's experience and demanding that lawmakers address the gaps in protection that had cost her life. Local organizations saw a surge in calls from women seeking help, many of whom cited her case as the catalyst for their decision to reach out. Lawmakers in New York and beyond faced mounting pressure to revisit bail reform laws and the protocols for handling domestic violence cases. Proposals were introduced to allow judges greater discretion in considering a defendant's history of violence and the specific risks posed to victims. The debate was heated, with some arguing that changes could undermine the progress made in reducing unnecessary pretrial detention, while others insisted that the law must do more to protect those in immediate danger. Kiara's family testified before legislative committees, sharing the details of her case and urging officials to prioritize the safety of victims over rigid legal formulas. The impact of her death was also felt within law enforcement agencies. Police departments across the region reviewed their procedures for responding to domestic violence calls, with some implementing new training programs focused on risk assessment and victim support. Community leaders called for greater collaboration between police, social services, and advocacy groups to ensure that no one facing abuse would fall through the cracks as she had. For many in Buffalo, Kiara's legacy became a call to action. Her story forced a reckoning with the realities of domestic violence and the urgent need for reform. While nothing could bring her back, her life and legacy inspired a movement that continues to fight for justice, safety, and dignity for all survivors. One of the most significant lessons from Kiara's case was the importance of listening to victims. Kiara had done everything society asks of someone in her position. She reported the abuse, documented the violence, sought help from authorities, and took extraordinary measures to protect herself and her children. Yet, her pleas were not met with the urgency they deserved. This disconnect between victims' lived realities and the system's response became a focal point for reform efforts. Advocates began pushing for more trauma-informed training for police officers, judges, and social workers, emphasizing the need to treat every report of domestic violence as a potential life or math situation. Another key takeaway was the need for flexibility in the legal system. Kiara's case exposed how rigid bail laws, designed to address broader issues of fairness and mass incarceration, can inadvertently endanger those most at risk. Lawmakers began to explore ways to give judges more discretion in cases involving repeat offenders or clear patterns of escalating violence. Some proposed the creation of specialized domestic violence courts, staffed by professionals with expertise in the dynamics of abuse, to ensure that warning signs are recognized and acted upon swiftly. Community support networks also came under scrutiny. Kiara's family and friends had rallied around her, but they often felt powerless against the machinery of the legal system. In response, local organizations expanded their outreach, offering more resources for families in crisis and creating rapid response teams to assist victims facing immediate threats. Schools and workplaces began implementing educational programs to help people recognize the signs of abuse and understand how to offer meaningful support. Technology played a growing role in both the risks and solutions surrounding domestic violence. Kiara's decision to record and share evidence of her abuse was courageous, but it also highlighted the dangers victims face when their abusers monitor their movements or online activity. In the wake of her death, tech companies and advocacy groups collaborated to develop safer ways for victims to document abuse and seek help without alerting their abuser. New apps and confidential hotlines were launched, providing discreet lifelines for those in danger. Perhaps the most profound change was cultural. Kiara's story shattered the illusion that domestic violence is a private matter or something that can be solved with a simple restraining order. Her murder forced a public reckoning with the reality that abusers often escalate when confronted, and that the most dangerous time for a victim is often after they seek help. Media coverage of her case helped destigmatize conversations about abuse, encouraging more survivors to come forward and more bystanders to intervene. Kiara's family, determined to ensure her death was not in vain, became tireless advocates for change. They spoke at rallies, met with lawmakers, and worked with local shelters to improve services for survivors. Their efforts contributed to the passage of new legislation in New York, granting judges greater authority to consider a defendant's full history in bail decisions for domestic violence cases. The law, informally known as Kiara's Law, was celebrated as a step forward, though advocates acknowledged that much work remained. Kiara's legacy is not just one of tragedy, but of transformation. Her courage and the determination of those who loved her have sparked changes that will protect countless others. In the end, her story is a testament to the power of one voice and one family to change the world.